All right, now the bond presentation. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go to the other side, and Dr. Pittenger and myself, we're going to go back and forth on the presentation. And so we'll go through that, and that'll be what happened. Oh, once I get my stuff together.
Good evening, President Lovelace, members of the board, members of our audience, and community patrons viewing online. We're here this evening to share with you the details of our proposal for a bond resolution and call for a vote date of February 14th, 2023. Although this presentation contains a wealth of information, I would ask that you jot your questions down and save them to the end, as the details in this presentation should answer the majority of those questions. Lastly, a big thank you goes to Kirk Wilson, our Director of Communications, for his work on this presentation, and to our Long Range Planning Committee for their work to prioritize our focus for this presentation. Lastly, should members of the community viewing this online have questions, those questions can be sent via email to merccontact@mustangps.org. 561. Those are the students that are new to Mustang this year. That's the size of an elementary school. This number is representative of our growth, around 4.5% over this past year. If you drive anywhere in our school district, you know homes are coming out of the ground faster than the grass. Although interest rates have risen and home sales may have slowed, Canadian County continues to grow at an alarming pace, grabbing our school district's full attention. This graph shows our district enrollment as projected by Zonda Education. Mustang contracted with Zonda over a year ago and commissioned a demographic study and a build-out study. That data has been presented to this board in public meetings. Zonda's projection for this year, made in early 2022, was within 1% of the actual enrollment for this school year. Their accuracy rate of 99.3 supports their projections as being reliable and valid. This accuracy gives Mustang the confidence that Zonda knows exactly what they are doing. Considering this data represents district-wide enrollment and the trends for enrollment, how does this shake out at each site and support the needs detailed in this presentation? This graphic lists the elementary schools with the year they were built, square footage, current enrollment, occupancy, and the last column there is percentage occupancy. When you look at the very bottom on the right and see that Riverwood has a percentage occupancy of 112.8, it's important to distinguish between A, assembly spaces, and E, educational spaces. Those are designated in architectural drawings, A spaces, assembly, and E spaces, educational spaces. For instance, a gymnasium might hold up to 1,000 students as an assembly space, but as an educational space for a PE class, it can hold the size of a normal class, let's say 25. When you see an occupancy percentage, it's the percentage of educational spaces that are occupied. Meaning at Riverwood, there are no empty classrooms, including the portables. And spaces like conference rooms, workrooms, and other non-educational spaces are doubling as classrooms. Even as we're adding 6 classrooms to Riverwood through ESSER dollars, which is a one-time expenditure using federal dollars for district improvements, the growth has completely outpaced the district's ability to respond to student after student after student calling Mustang home. Intermediate, middle, and high school occupancy and occupancy percentage are illustrated here, much like the elementary. As you can see, there is room to grow a bit in 2 of our middle schools, and you see that the high school is right at 80.6% occupied. What is important to note with the high school is that over the past several years, large assembly spaces, such as the Event Center and the Performing Arts Center, have been added to other large assembly spaces like the Health and Wellness Center and the existing competition gym. Despite classroom additions to the C building and the science building, limited classroom space is creating a squeeze that can be felt inside the high school. In addition, this school is projected to have an enrollment over 4,500 students between the years of 2026 and 2027. Some might suggest that interest rates going up has slowed down the growth, and there certainly is some validity to that. However, consider this. Current existing students in 8th through 11th grades, rolling up for next year, total 3,942. Their current enrollment is 3,747, a difference of approximately 200 students. We're trying to keep up with not only future growth, but our most recent growth as well. This data leads to the identification of our greatest need addressing growth. It's clearly apparent in the elementary grades and at the high school. A new elementary number 9, and an expansion at the high school will address this need. In addition to these 2 capital improvements, other priorities touching every school in our district will be detailed in the coming slides. But before we do that, it's important to thank our patrons and recognize the tremendous support of our community over the past decade. And for that, I will ask Superintendent Bradley to take us on a trip down memory lane.
Well, good evening. It's certainly a different view being on this side of the podium, looking at you. But as we were preparing this and just looking back at the bond issues that that the community has so graciously approved, and just being able to provide facilities, provide equipment, provide materials to our students as we grow throughout time has just been an amazing process. And looking at, we started with the 2012 bond of just looking back, and what you'll see is just highlights of what was part of those bond issues. This is certainly not a complete list of what we were able to accomplish. And as we saw the students up here representing Horizon, Canyon Ridge, and Prairie View, those places didn't exist prior to 2012. So here we have some facilities that are relatively new, 10 years old, and already they have become so impactful to our students and to our families. So just being able to look and see how we have progressed over time, and the common theme, shocker, I'm going to give you the spoiler alert, it's growth. Growth has been impacting us for many, many years, and that is the reason that dictates the need for the bond issue that we're talking about today. So you look at 2014, again, we were able to provide some expanded facilities as well as some new facilities from this bond issue. And when I look at this, I remember in 2014 when we crossed, if you see the logo in the upper right, it says 10,000 strong. And that was a huge milestone for us of crossing the 10,000 student threshold. And here we are a few years later, that's sitting at 13,500. So it can just show you how fast, and through Dr. Pittenger's graph, showing you the data and the need to making sure we're addressing some of the, not just the classroom facilities, but as well as some of the programs and the facilities that they occupy. 2006, we called this an operational bond, and in relative terms, this was a smaller bond than the previous ones, but it was much needed in the world of textbooks, HVAC, technology, transportation, and allowed us to touch some of the parking lot and the track at the high school. Now, 2017, this was a significant bond issue for Mustang. A total of 35 projects that were included with the 17 bond, and it created some sites that were new to Mustang, and now it's just common to be calling, Central Middle School, Riverwood, Meadowbrook, that those are parts of our family, parts of our Mustang public school family, as well as being able to provide, again, for the materials, provide for the programs as part of any bond that we've presented. So you can see there just kind of a snapshot that as we've gone back in time, what we've done is be able to come to the community with proposals that meet the need of growth in specific areas as we've identified them. And so just to kind of round that out, in 2012, the total district population was 9,204. And as of today, I checked, we were at 13,550 students. So just in a 10-year span, we've gained over 4,000 students. And then as we look to the future, to the next 10 years, there's every indication that we're going to continue to grow. Now the question mark is, how fast? Is the growth rate from 12 to 22, faster than 22 to 32. That time will tell, but what we do know, growth is going to happen. So what's the plan? What are we talking about? And this is going to be an overview, and then we're going to dig into the details as we go along here. So for those who might have missed October's presentation, and as a reminder, we are looking at changing the philosophy of bonds for Mustang Public Schools. We're going to move to a phased approach to continue to build the momentum of our district. This is not to say that the previous approach was wrong, or that the Long-Range Planning Committee looked at numerous options during previous bonding, but we recognize that as a growing district, we still have needs that can only be met through the Student Investment Plan. So when we look at this, what does it mean to have a phased approach? You're going to see 3 dates up there. 2023, which is the election we're talking about here, and then looking ahead to 2027, and then even further to 2031. So what we're doing is, and how is this different from the past, is that we would look at our needs and we would try to get as much as we could in one bond issue, which would essentially cap out how much we could possibly get in a bond issue. So what we're doing for this phased approach is planning on 2 more bond issues, and we will go through the same process we did for 2023, needs to be determined on those 2. But then looking at it and bringing together the timeline from 23 to 27, and that way being able to accomplish really 3 things. Number 1, addressing the growth of students within the district. Number 2, being flexible enough to address the needs more closely to the time that they arise. And then the third one, which is very important, is maintaining our fiscal responsibility, meaning that we are being trusted with community money, and we want to make sure we're doing the absolute best we can. One of those responsibilities is going to be, what can we do to pay off debt faster while still trying to accomplish addressing the growth and being flexible. So that is a part of this phased approach, is being able to pay off our debt in a faster manner while still accomplishing those 2 things. So moving in this direction, we know some things. The current millage at 28, we're unable to keep up with the student enrollment growth. Looking at a target of 30, which prevents losing ground on student growth. And then, like I said, paying off debt, and then maintaining existing recurring dollars. And if I were writing notes, I would put right next to recurring dollars, lifeline to Mustang Public Schools on those. And I'll explain more about that in a second. And then addressing our aging facilities. One of the things that keeps coming up is, as we go for bond issues to address growth, we're actually trying to create more classroom spaces, is that people, whether it's students, parents, faculty members that are at one of our aging facilities, they understand that. They get the growth. They understand why we need to invest in new buildings. But it's an honest question of, when is it our turn? When we are in an aging facility, when do we have an opportunity to have an update, to have a refresh, to have something paid attention to our facility? And so with this phased approach, being able to be more flexible, like in 27 and 31, we might have some opportunities to come in there and address our aging facilities more efficient, in a better manner. Right now, it's just a function of, well, let's wait until we pay down enough debt, and then we'll see what happens. Well, we know that we're going to grow, so going to this phased approach shorten up that time, and then we're able to address those. Now, is it a total redo? No, I can't predict the future, but I do know it is a priority of the Long Range Planning Committee that we do spend some time on our aging facilities. So in just an overview of what is it we're asking for, and this is with a 30 mil target, is that we would have 180.9 million in total funds, which with financing included, and looking at it in two categories: capital improvements, that would include the building and creation of elementary number 9, high school expansion, and safety security. You can see those. And then the recurring dollars, which would be money we see every year to help address some of the bullet points. And again, we'll go through those in great detail. So if you're splitting it up, transportation, if you remember, has to be its own proposition by law. So it would be about 176.9 million for the capital improvement and recurring funds, and then $4 million specifically for transportation. Okay, so we're going to go through those specifics in the next slides with Dr. Pittenger.
A little bit about capital improvements. I've mentioned elementary number 9. So in the top right, you see a graph of the elementary enrollment demonstrating a continued climb through the year 2031. This bond proposal would include dollars for the purchasing of land, construction, architects and engineering, furniture, fixtures, and equipment to complete a brand new elementary school. The photo you see here is simply a rendering of what a new elementary school might look like. The actual school will be similar to our other newer elementaries in size, layout, footprint, and aesthetics. Considering land is a part of this proposal, the district does not currently own the property. Sharing a location or intended location may impact the possibility of securing said land, so at this time, our location is yet to be determined. Additionally, under capital improvements is a high school expansion. Again, the photo you see is simply a rendering of what the facility might look like. However, you'll notice similarities in the exterior motif of the rendering down to the roofing, windows, and exterior brickwork. Currently, for lunch at the high school, there are 5 lunch periods. We have pre-brunch, brunch, early lunch, lunch, and late lunch, spanning hours. With the addition of a new cafeteria and kitchen space, 2 lunches per cafeteria can be scheduled within a reasonable length of time, providing increased flexibility for class schedules. Along with the cafeteria and kitchen, a new gym space and classroom space specific to certain student needs, this building will provide the space needed most immediately for programs such as aviation and digital course innovations such as esports. Lastly, a space dedicated to some of our most vulnerable students can be specifically designed and constructed with their individual needs in mind, creating an environment that sets our students up for success. The location may be a bit familiar to many of you in the rendering, so to provide a little bit of context, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Bradley.
He didn't want to address that one. And Kirk, I'm assuming you see many pictures of principals in the presentation. You did get their permission, right? Because I don't want them thinking it's me that chose their pictures. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the location here on the high school, there's limited options for what we can use for space in expanding the high school. And so the current location would be, and follow me here, on the current old gym, because there's the PE building that was, we used that area for the science building, and that was on the north side of the district, or north side of the high school campus. This is the area that's directly north of the health and wellness. You probably know it. It's the gym that has home of the Broncos on the front. This is that area that would be designated for the high school expansion. And anytime we come up with we look at multiple locations, we look at what areas, is it absolutely imperative that we have to remove what's existing there in order for something new to come on there? We look at multiple different areas, and we kept coming back to that area because it was so centrally located, particularly since it's going to be housing a cafeteria and kitchen, that it would be able to pull students this way, while the other cafeteria area would serve the northern side of the campus. So anytime we do this, much like the PE building, we want to honor the history and the tradition of what everybody put into that building. There's been state championships, there's been all kinds of activities and people who have made us proud by what they did in that building. So we're going to do very similar, should this bond, if we put the high school expansion there, is we're going to honor that area like we did with the PE building. We're going to invite the community to come in, see it one more time, and then also we were able to make sections of the floor, and we were able to provide those for community members that wanted to purchase it. I think we partnered with the foundation on that one. I have to check on that. But we're very aware of how proud former alumni are of the accomplishments they had. So we will handle that, and working with Heath with MA+, he helped us with handling that process with the other buildings. So I just want the board to know that we will take that into account and do a good job of honoring the tradition and history of that place.
So the high school expansion is more than just a building. That expansion includes more than just additional classroom space, a new gym for PE classes and athletic practice, a new cafeteria and kitchen to return to a more normal lunch schedule, and other program needs. It also includes updates to existing facilities to address important needs there as well. Turf projects are necessary because, much like clothing, turf wears out. It must be replaced periodically to ensure safety ratings for competition. Although still in compliance, our football field is nearing the end of life and needs to be replaced. This proposal includes that replacement. In addition, our softball program will see improvements to their facilities as well, with the addition of an indoor hitting facility. Safety and security needs at the high school will include additional badge readers and camera system upgrades, moving from analog to digital, among other safety initiatives. It will also include operational dollars to address aging HVAC and mechanical equipment, as well as flooring, lighting, and roofing. Lastly, technology for the high school, including internet connectivity, instructional technology, and devices will be included also. Most of these items can never be done, so it's important to address the need to take advantage of innovation while maintaining the quality standard education experiences that our students receive. As you can see from these photos, the cafeteria at Mustang Elementary is not connected to the main building except by a covered walkway. This is the only school in Mustang that has a cafeteria separate from the main building, where students must traverse outside to visit the cafeteria. In this proposal, if approved, an enclosed walkway would be constructed to connect the two structures, satisfying an element of not only safety, but comfort for our little ones as well.
Took them 40 years to do that one.
Mustang North Middle School and Mustang Middle School use their gyms as their primary assembly space, but these are currently not climate controlled. This is never more evident than during community events such as Veterans Day, when we invite those who have served to attend and be honored and recognized. This proposal would add HVAC to the gymnasiums at both schools. Additionally, several of our playgrounds have outdated equipment. This proposal would allow the replacement of equipment, renovation of grounds, and refreshing of playgrounds throughout our district. Playground equipment was also a priority for the 2014 and 2017 bonds. Moving to recurring funds, Superintendent Bradley.
All right, you heard me discuss recurring funds previously. And so after we have the capital costs, the other piece, the other side of the proposal is the recurring funds. So what does that mean? So the first thing is, I want to make sure that I'm clear on this, is that recurring funds affect each school site. There's not recurring funds that only touch or affect a part of the school district. It's every single school district or site in the school district will benefit from the recurring dollars side of the bond issue. What is recurring dollars? So let me give you an example of how we're using it now. In 2012, a piece of the bond issue was set aside for recurring dollars, and it was broken up into probably 10, maybe 11 categories, like HVAC, roofing, flooring, athletics, band. So there were very specific groups or areas that received recurring dollars every year. And so that money was allowed to be used in those specific areas, and we wouldn't have to pull money from general fund. Another one was textbooks. Textbooks was instructional materials was a very large expense, and so that is dedicated bond money that goes for specific purposes, so that general fund money does not have to be used for those expenses. And so I've called recurring dollars the lifeline in many cases, because when you have good years where you receive state money and local money, and you have lean years from those, the recurring dollars stayed the same. And so we were able to make grounds or keep the facilities going with that use of money. So, for example, so that explains what recurring dollars are. It's just dedicated money for specific material department like that. So let me talk about what this bond issue, how we're going to use the same structure for recurring dollars for this bond issue. Take, for example, you have security, operations, academics, athletic and fine arts, and there's some other programs on the next slide, but we'll just look at these four, that those areas will be given a dedicated amount of money each year. And we will have access to that money to maybe do a little planning that maybe for 1 year, not a whole lot is needed for security, but in year 3, we know we need to update a bunch. So that gives us the flexibility to look down the road and plan for big events. But specifically with security, that is something we take seriously every single day, and we want to look and take advantage of every opportunity to increase our security and safety. Looking at security cameras and upgrades, so what does that mean? What would that look like? Right now in the district, we have approximately 650 lenses. You know, a camera can have 1 lens or it can have 3 lenses. They can have multiple lenses, but we have 650 lenses in the district. Technology has advanced so much in the way of software that supports or can be used to support cameras of what they can do, that a camera has always been something to this point where if you heard something happen, something was reported, you go to the cameras and then you start watching to see what happened. Very much like an autopsy. You go back in time to see what happened. Software has really taken a leap forward to where when you can integrate the certain software in, the cameras can alert you to certain events as they happen. So the problem with that, 650 lenses, is that about 60% of those are analog. The software that is required to do those things, to be more of a real-time notification, require digital. So we would have to immediately start replacing 60% of our total cameras with digital. And I'd just like to make the comparison. Analog bad, digital good. So whenever we get flexibility with software. So that's a specific issue with security cameras and the upgrades that we're going to be able to do with this money on a regular basis, because it's going to be provided yearly, where it's not just fix some. Well, we can look ahead and say, in 4 years, we get the other 40% are timing out. So being able to plan for those events as well. Operations, that's a huge category. So here's a fun fact for you. There is 2.5 million square feet of rooftop in the district. That's a lot of roofing. And those familiar with roofing know that sometimes you get leaks, and nobody likes to just let a leak happen. You have to address it. Having money dedicated specifically for operations so that we can address those leaks and roofing issues as they occur, that's just preventative maintenance. That's something that we have long aspired to make sure we're keeping up with what we have and maybe getting a little ahead. The 2012 recurring dollars have allowed us to do that, address what happens that's unexpected, and also to move forward preventative maintenance. The other part of that HVAC is we have over 1,000 HVAC units throughout the district in various stages. And so you're going to have issues with them. They're going to go down, they're going to bust, they're going to do different things. Having the recurring dollars, when we get a call, and actually not even a call, because now from the last bond issue, we have software that alerts us that something has stopped working. So then we're able to alert our teams in the HVAC department, and they're able to go and start working on that. So, you know, you don't really think on bond issue, oh wow, roofing, flooring, and HVAC units, but it's that environment that we really don't want kids thinking about it. We just want the environment to be conducive for them learning. And so that's why we've taken a pretty serious approach to the environment when it comes to operations. So like I said, academics would be textbooks, instructional resources. Fine arts and athletics, we're very proud of our programs, very proud of that. You saw out in the lobby a little before the meeting started, choir, it doesn't matter if it's choir, art, band, they require materials to perform. And so this allows yearly money to make strides in the equipment for them. And I've talked about technology. We definitely have made improvements in student and staff devices. We want to continue that. Transportation, like I had said, it's a separate prop. But here we would dedicate money for activity buses as well as route buses, special ed buses. We're looking at on a rotation of 10 new buses every other year. So then rotate out our aging fleet, bring in some new ones, and as well as the activity buses, bringing them in. All right. So as you can tell, there's a lot to this potential bond proposal, but there's one thing that we do need to talk about, and that's part of this additional information, and that is, how do you pay for a bond issue? So the next slide I'll give you a second to kind of look that over and what are all those numbers, what does it mean? And our goal here is for every taxpayer that lives in a school district to understand, well, what does this do to my taxes? How is this going to impact me? So the actual tax rate is made up of a lot of different sources. For example, on the sample tax bill on the right, you can see that the town, vocational institution, county, and school all make up the total tax rate. And you can, the T, town, V, vocational, C, county, S, school, you can see there on the far left. It really, and when you look at this, you know, and what impact, if my property taxes go up, what part of that is from the school? Well, really, the biggest impact to your property tax going up is your property value going up. There's very few of these things that are on the screen that are impacted by the school that are different year to year. So, for example, when you look at the T60, and this is an actual tax statement from someone that and this is I would say a majority of the people living in the school district. You live in Oklahoma City. You live in Canadian County, and your kids go to Mustang School. So that's what this situation is. Now, it'd be a little bit different for somebody that lives in the city of Mustang. You definitely wouldn't see Oklahoma City on there. So this is a breakdown for somebody in that situation. So if you slide down to the Mustang, the general and the building, those numbers, the millage, 36.31 and 5.19, those are dictated by the state. We have no control over what those millage rates are. Now, the millage rates are the same for the districts, all districts. The dollars are different depending on where you live. So the dollar amount is different, but the millage, the tax rate, is set by the state. So then we're down to the sinking fund, and this is what we're really talking about here. We're talking about when we have a bond issue, this is the piece of the tax picture that is impacted by the bond issue, would be the sinking fund. And on the right, you can see that this is actually 2022. It came in at 25.79, and just as a reminder, our target since 2009 has always been 28. That we target 28 in all of our calculations, but you won't know the actual until a year from that point. So it's a projection. And 11 of the 12 years, when we have when we've looked at the past, 11 of the 12 years, the actual has been less than the target. So it's always we're targeting 28, but the actual is coming in lower, and that creates a small deficit, and we'll talk about why moving to a different phased approach will help capture that delta between the targeted and the actual. So to kind of really expand on this, where does this put Mustang? So what Dr. Pittenger is going to do is take you through some comparison of millage and numbers.
So let's take a look at tax rates among school districts across the state. So in this graphic, you see school districts that are in the same size or close to our size or in the same proximity as Mustang. That's where the list is compiled from. A historical view on the left for 2021-2022 shows Mustang with a millage or a tax rate in the bottom third of the schools listed. It's actually 19 out of 27 listed, to be exact. This ranking is with a millage target of 28 mills, which we've been below, as Superintendent Bradley said, in 11 of the past 12 years. So our target's been 28. Our tax burden has come in below 28, 11 out of the last 12 years. Considering the growth in Mustang over the past decade, our district has focused on maintaining a lower tax burden for our patrons. We are now at a point where the growth has accelerated, creating a situation where our tax target cannot keep up with the growth. Should this bond issue pass and our target move to 30 mills, we would move from 19th to number 9. And that shows you on the right the unofficial 22-23 numbers. Moving to 9th would barely put us at the top third of district tax rates like us. The source of this data comes from the Oklahoma State Department of Education's updated Estimate of Needs statewide report for 21-22. It's also important to note that several school districts in this last few years, or even coming up in the near future, may have bond issues as well, which would change potential millage rates impacting their tax rate. Next is capital investment per student.
I don't know, there's something about that kid I just like. I want to go make whatever it is he's making because he's looking like he's having some fun there. That looks like a STEM project to me. So the next slide is, it's a new metric. It's a metric that trying to put apples to apples when we're talking about a school district and taking into account unique enrollment and millages is looking at the far right column is the investment per student. So just as a note that this is last year's 2021. This year's we've added 561 students, so our actual millage is lower. So right there it's 2602, but 21-22 school year, and we've shown you the 22-23 millage rate, so that way if you're saying, wait a minute, there's a different number, this is last year's information. And the reason for that is not everything's been reported from other districts. So this is based on local funding from community-approved bonds, not inclusive of state, federal funding. As student enrollment increases, our per-student investment decreases unless we increase our millage target to capture those funds. So just kind of in a nutshell, what this shows is where, if you just look at Mustang, what that's saying is just bond dollars, we spend $1,290 per student using bond dollars. And so then you can see it takes into account a district's millage and enrollment and then comes up with a standard number of what they spend in bond dollars per student. So if we were to look, this bond issue were to pass, we were to move to 30, you would see that we would be right above Moore and just below Muskogee in the amount of investment per student and the amount of bond money we have per student in Mustang. So I say this not as an indictment at all. This is not a, hey Mustang, we can do better. It's not that at all. It's just how when you have a growing district like Mustang and you increase the enrollment, that is going to divide the money by a number, and it's going to reduce your investment per student. So as we grow, that number is going to go down lower. But as we grow, we have more students that we need to maintain the level of facilities and instructional that our kids are used to. So we'll go additional considerations. So here, we know there's still some lingering questions that we've heard. What about a second high school? Why do we need to move the millage target to 30? So on the first point of that, the second high school, is that this new approach of bonds, planning for the phased, like I said earlier, we want to be accommodating to the growth, meaning try to be ahead of it, plan for it, be flexible, and retire debt. So if we were to say we need a second high school today, that would be somewhere between $250 and $350 million is how much a second high school would cost. And just to make sure that I'm clear with everyone, that is not a carbon copy of what we currently have. That is just a square footage that would, multiplied by the current cost per square foot, that would get us. It would get us a second high school, but we wouldn't be able to provide the PAC, the event center, things like that. So it would definitely be a lesser than. But even if that was the case and we needed a second high school and that's what everybody was pointing their arrows to, we wouldn't have enough money to do that. We don't have enough bonding capacity because we've had to take care of our elementary, our intermediates, and middle schools, as well as the high school. So if that can't happen, if we can't have the funding in order to do that, is that all there is to it? Well, not necessarily. So this is where we, again, talking about the phased plan, is that if we start having a plan where we're addressing the needs, being flexible, and paying down debt in a faster way, this could open up the conversation down the road should future boards, future long-range planning committees say this is what we need to do. What we're doing today is creating an environment where we are paying down debt faster to possibly allow that conversation to happen. So the second thing there is, well, talking about the phase plan, is also being able to impact our aging facilities. That is, again, I cannot reiterate that enough, is that it is a strong desire by all to make sure we're addressing all of our facilities in the school district. all of our sites. So then we talk about, you can see the comparison of the two options, the 28 and the 30, for this election. What we're advocating is to implement this phased student investment plan starting with this bond election on February 14th, 2023, with an increase in the millage target to 30. So being able to, we've said over and over about how 28 is no longer able to keep up with growth. Here is a good example, and I've also talked about how recurring dollars are essential. So in 2012, target of 28, we were able to have X amount of dollars per year, okay? So it's roughly around 1.9, let's say, of what we get per year now off of the 2012 bond issue. If we were to keep this at 28, we would see a decrease in recurring dollars to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So at a bond issue at 28, we would have significantly less dollars per year to take care of safety, security, to take care of academics, to take care of athletics, fine arts. So we would have a serious reduction in money per year from funds. If we move to a target of 30, this will keep us at probably a few $100,000 more than what the 1.9 is, but we would be able to at least maintain the quality and the attention that we have currently to those safety, security, transportation, all those things that are affected by recurring dollars. So, but what does that mean to the average Mustang resident? So what we're talking about is a $2 million increase going from 28 to 30. And since we cannot account for every resident's home value situation, what we did was we came up with a median home value in the Mustang School District area. And that came out to about $225,333. And so that impact on that home by a potential impact of 2 mils would be $4.34 per month. And you can see on the right that if the home value is less than that, then it would be a lesser impact. The higher the value, then the higher the impact. And on our website, when we put out the information, there's actually a calculation of how did we get that, and that came from the county assessor's website. This is not something we calculated. This came from the county assessor on how to do that. All right, Dr. Pittenger.
So what would this level of student investment mean? By increasing $197 per student, we keep up with growth in programs, facilities, and instruction. We move to the middle of the pack when compared to our like peers with this investment, and we provide much-needed space to accommodate existing and future students. With a phased approach, we address immediate prioritized needs in a way that brings some things up to date while laying the foundation for 2027 with others to continue the momentum. So in summary, the big need items: elementary number 9, high school expansion, district-wide safety and security, Mustang Elementary Safety Corridor, playground refresh, and transportation. Ongoing operational needs through recurring dollars to address safety, HVAC, technology, textbooks, operations, athletics, fine arts, and transportation. But really, what is the key takeaway here? We're growing, fastest at the high school level and at the elementary. We urgently need that space. Safety is on everyone's mind, and we can never be safe enough. In this phase, Mustang Elementary gets the connecting corridor. This lays the ground for 2027 projects. For many of our youngest, the highlight of the day is the playground. Not to say that our teachers are not wonderful, but it's kind of hard to compete with monkey balls. The equipment needs to be relevant and safe. We want that safety to begin with the first interaction we have with our kiddos on a daily basis, and that's on the bus. Retiring older buses and upgrading bus safety equipment is an ongoing need. Recurring dollars are the lifeblood of any school district from an operational perspective. We need those dollars to stay warm in the winter, cool in the summer, interact in a technologically connected world where programs and opportunities change the lives of kids, giving them hope for a better future as we keep on moving with a little momentum. What questions do you have for us?
Could you expand a little bit on security plans, safety and security, like what thinking there?
Well, within, you don't want to say, well, here's the entire safety plan, but
Right.
I know what you're saying, trying to give some updates. You have anywhere from fencing to ID badges. What we have is card readers. As I'm going through this listening tour, talking to every site and every teacher, we're learning. Nobody has a problem with the locked doors, keeping all doors locked, because we know that's the number one deterrent, is having a locked door. But there's access issues that during normal course of the day, multiple people need access to one room, and that's just common practice. So looking at where we can phase in card readers so that we still maintain a level of security so it's not propped or multiple keys are shared. So we're looking at those types of environments where we're increasing the number of badge readers, doing a better, in some areas, fencing, cameras, doing those types of things for safety and security.
Very good.
An example might be playground access, right? The main front doors have badge access, but the doors to the playground do not. So adding badge access to a playground door prevents those doors from being held open and stopped open, because every teacher has a badge that can access that door for students to the playground.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Is there a way to predict, I know this is a crystal ball question, but with us paying our debt down quicker, what kind of space are we going to have in 2027 for bond issue? Any way to predict kind of what kind of dollars are going to be available?
Not anything that I would say this is what we can do. The goal is, two things would have to happen. We would have to at least maintain the 6% NAV growth so that our valuation's growing. That's one big piece of the puzzle. But even if it's not the full 6, we still would be in a growth situation. But then the other side of that would be on, as far as the how much money we'd be able to capture, is not to max out how much you can go for. So that's why we want to bring those bond issues closer together, so we're not in this constant cycle, max out, because that just pushes the debt further down. So we're wanting to address the needs, be flexible, but what is that dollar? Each year, I could probably get you closer to what that amount might be, but right now, I wouldn't, it'd be a pure guess is what I would do.
But the issue is to pay that debt down so we can create some space, because we're behind right now. This lets us keep up.
Yes.
But it seems like the goal is to get ahead.
It is.
And in 2027, we probably need to be looking ahead to address some of those additional goals.
Absolutely.
Without boxing yourself in, would you be able to kind of give a breakdown of how much you're anticipating spending in each of these areas? Not now, but I mean, you said you're still having to put that
Yes,
together.
on the resolution, there's, I'm gonna go superintendent on you. There's LR financing, which includes financing, and then there's other components that don't really impact finance or are not a financing vehicle. So we have numbers on there that are dedicated to those specific projects, like technology, things like that. We have that laid out there. But what I would say is, as you know, you have a vote before you on whether or not to adopt this resolution, calling for an election. And if that passes, what I would commit to you guys is because numbers are changing almost by the day. So as those things fluctuate, more money may be available for safety and security or whatever on recurring. But then if interest rates go up and the cost of building a building goes up, then now there's a balance that we have to strike. So as we progress through this, I would commit to bring you updates as a board on what we're looking at money-wise per each one of those categories.
So on the, it was slide 4, I believe, but it looks like Riverwood, it was like at 112% occupancy, I think.
That's correct.
Okay, so is that with the add-on or without the add-on? The 112%?
So that square footage includes the portables, and it also does include the square footage added that are not occupied.
Okay,
It
so,
includes the 6 classrooms.
and that school's not very old, right?
That's correct.
So looking at elementary number 9, is the thought process to build something larger than maybe what we currently have, so we can have growth going into it? So I think most of our elementaries are built for what, about 750 students maybe?
Right.
I mean, is a thought maybe to build it a little bit bigger to have that growth already kind of built in?
Yeah, whenever it was built, Riverwood was 76,000 square feet. And so then, because right now the 6 classrooms, even though the square footage is models, or reflects that, they're not, it's still dirt. So they're not actually being used. But we know that we can't build a 76,000 square foot elementary. We need to be in the 80,000, mid 80,000s for that. And that's the plan right now for number 9, is to be as big as Riverwood is right now.
And the momentum or the staggered bond, so 2023, 2027, and 2031, that thought process was because we didn't want to do like a huge bond and then we would be locked in for till like mid 2035 or something. Is that an accurate statement?
That's correct.
Okay. Because then that would obviously lock in whoever the next 5 board members are up here and potentially wherever you're at, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's just provide the flexibility and keeping away from just maxing out, and because then you lose that flexibility and reacting more closely to the situation.
I do have a question. This is just for my knowledge more than anything. What time is brunch?
You stole my question. No, it was a pre-brunch.
Free brunch, yeah.
Wasn't it pre-brunch and then?
10:30. And school starts at what time?
8:35.
Oh, wow.
And what time is the last lunch?
It ends at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
And then, am I correct, is one of those lunches a split lunch?
2 of those lunches are split.
2 of them are split, where they go to class, go to lunch, go back to class.
So what's the time frame to build the new cafeteria? I would imagine the 7th and 8th graders are pretty excited about that.
Well,
Having a kid that's gone through the system, whenever he had the 10:30 lunch, around 2 o'clock, he was starving. Not literally, but he was very hungry. So this is, if this passes, this is quite a good accomplishment
absolutely.
for those kiddos.
It's, you know, I don't know the state of where we are with the supply chain and all that stuff. I hear things are starting to open up a little bit, but I still would 12-month would be super aggressive. 18-month might be more in line with where things are, availability of supplies, subcontractors, all that
Right,
thing.
yeah.
So I would say somewhere in that range.
I mean, I know you guys aren't like turf experts, but can you kind of give us an idea like how that's evaluated and then like what's the time frame of? I don't expect it to be like,
Well, there's probably a turf expert in here.
no, like, so like
The rating.
does somebody come out yearly and get on our turf fields and then rate them? So is it like a third party company?
Yes,
Okay, and then, so they tell us when it gets to a certain point, like you guys got a year left and you have to change it, and if we don't, I'm assuming they just halt all activities on that?
correct. So we assume all liability once it gets to a certain rating, it becomes unplayable. If we continue to play on that, then we're liable for any catastrophic injury that might occur.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And that's done yearly, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
And how far out are we from that potential scenario?
We are about 1 to 1.5 years, just depending on the wear and tear. So what happens is, most people don't know, is that both football, soccer, and band all perform on that field. And so band actually causes the most wear and tear, because why? 350 people marching in the same spots every single day, right? Very particular, where the football's all over the field. And so you see certain areas around the goal line where band stands every day and marches. You know, it causes wear and tear in those certain areas.
And if we reach that point, let's say this didn't pass, then you wouldn't be able to use the field anymore, is that correct?
That is correct.
For any activity.
You can march on.
You know, you talked about portables. If this doesn't pass, what would elementary schools look like?
Well, if this doesn't pass with us out of space at the elementary level, we immediately start going up in class size. Is that because there's no other classrooms? We might be able to look at redistricting, but that is not going to gain us across the board a gain there. So we would have increased class sizes. You mentioned portables. Portables are not cheap, and now with the new or the enforcement of storm shelters in Oklahoma City and Mustang cities, is that for any square footage you add, portable or not, you have to add a certain percentage of storm shelters. So that is where the cost goes up. Maybe it's $300, $400, $500 a square foot to build a building. Well, you can jump that to $700, $800 per square foot on the areas that you have to make a safe room or a storm shelter as part of it. So it doesn't matter, we would have to take money from our general fund, which is our pot for teachers, supplies, that type of thing, in order to pay for a portable. Because at 2023, in the summer, we run out of all 2012 bond funds. So we have no more bond funds available to us.
And significantly, I'm hearing is we'd also lose those recurring funds
Correct. Yeah,
that
those
really
go away this
feed
summer.
into what we educate our kids with.
Correct.
All right, any other questions you guys have?
So you touched on, sorry, because it's going to come up, usually does, another high school, 2 high schools versus 1 high school. Did I hear you right and said that, you said that if we were to do 2 high schools, we would not have what we have here currently, being the PAC, the gym, the football field, the science. It would just probably be 1 or 2 buildings maybe to house students?
It would be the basics, yes. Though.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other challenge to that is that the largest part of our population is on the north side of the district. So you have a large high school on the south side of the district, and if you build a high school on the north side, you still would be transporting a bunch of kids to the south side because that's where the larger high school is. So proximity-wise, you would have a bit of a challenge there of trying to, where do the kids come from to populate that? But the bigger issue, and that could be resolved, the bigger issue is there's just not enough money possible to build that a high school that would be comparable. And it still wouldn't, it would be a less than high school.
Yeah, yeah. So just to let everyone know that maybe didn't hear the presentation last time by the Long Range Planning Committee, a couple of us were on that committee and we were able to hear from community members, builders, leaders, administration, and the flavor of that meeting very clearly was 1 high school. And we looked at the 2 high school scenario, we discussed it, but it came back to being 1 Bronco. So, and that seems to be echoed throughout the community, although there are other, there's people that have questions, why does the Mustang have 2? But I just want everyone to know that it was thoroughly examined by the planning committee and by you guys, and which is, one reason why it's not being offered as 2 high schools in this bond issue.
Yeah, I will say though that that was with 10,000 people in the school. When you're sitting at 19,000, that conversation gets a lot different. So there is concern. I have concern. We're going to put a lot of money in another high school when I think, to me, it's inevitable that at some point we're going to have enough kids that we're going to have to look at 2 high schools. That's my opinion, but there's just not money there. And the thing I do like about this plan, it does let us revisit the issue in 27.
It allows
Because
for
we're
that
going to have to
conversation.
address it at some point.
Correct.
I agree.
Other questions? We appreciate your time this evening. Thank you. And consideration for the vote.
Yep, thank you, guys.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, next on the agenda is agenda item D, business, business item 1. Do you want to speak?
That's Zach. That's you, Zach.
Good evening.
All right.
You've just heard a lot about what's in this resolution, so I'll just kind of walk through the ABCs on the agenda and then answer your questions. I can also speak to the planning if you have any follow-ups. But this is the action item that formally calls the election for February 14th. So I believe that you have a copy of this in your packets, but you can see in section 1 there's actually the actual language for the ballot, what will be on the ballots on February 14th if you approve this. So there'll be 2 propositions. The first one for $176,900,000, which is for all the capital, all the actually, it's everything except for the $4 million for transportation, which, as you heard and as you know, has to be separate. So the second proposition is also shown in section 1, which is for $4 million even for transportation items. So that's what will be on the ballots. All your normal precincts are going to be open, as they always are. We always do that. So everyone will vote in their normal location. We also have to set a maturity limit and interest rate limit, and the interest rate limit is statutory, so we have that not to exceed 10%. We sell the bonds through a competitive sale, so we certainly don't anticipate ever being near that, and so it's more of just form language for the resolution. We also have a long history of keeping our bond issues as short as we can, and so we've been doing 5-year GO bond issues for quite a while to limit the interest cost for you and your patrons. And so that's also shown here to keep the bond, each of the series of bonds when issued to no more than 5 years, to continue to seek to reduce the interest cost. That is generally what's in the resolution. Section 4 has all the projects, as you've just heard, as well as the dollars allocated for each of those. Because of the law, we will have this in the newspaper. All of the projects are posted in the newspaper prior to the election, and we also have the Bond Transparency Act notice, which is a law that went into effect in 2017, which we have to show not just the new projects, but also outstanding debt and how it was utilized. And so the voters are going to have a chance to see all of the projects for this election and the dollars allocated in multiple locations. Again, February 14th would be the date. So that's what's in the resolution. This is your action item to call it. I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do you have any estimates on the usable funds on the 176 million? What's the fees and all that's taken out?
Yes.
Going to change a little bit, but
It is going to change, and it could change a lot. So I'm giving you kind of a worst case, hopefully.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I'm saying that we're having to guess what a mortgage rate's going to be in 6 months. So if anybody asked you to do that, you probably wouldn't want to do that right now. So that's what we're doing. And in an effort to hopefully maximize your dollars, we've tried to plan ahead that the rates will be significantly higher from here, so that hopefully when we get to May or June and we actually lock in that rate on a lot of the money, we're going to have more funds than we expect. So I'm saying that before I give you the number, so you know that hopefully it's more than that, okay? And so when we get to that date, hopefully it's more than that. So, but of the 176, is that what you said? 120?
and then you said the due dates, it's not 5 years all at once. You said serially, so we're going to stagger them.
So you'll issue bonds serially, and when those bonds are issued, it will have a not to exceed 5 years from the date of issuance, just like our bonds now. Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Zach? Thanks, Zach. Business item 1, discussion and possible board action to approve or not approve a resolution authorizing the calling and holding of a special election to be held in the Mustang School District, to authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds, and setting forth the following items. A, setting a date for the bond election, February 14th of 2023. B, setting an amount and purpose of the bond election. C, setting a maturity limitation. D, setting interest rate limitation. And E, setting polling places.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Landreth,
Second.
second by Mr. Schrader. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Business item 2, discussion and possible board action to elect or not elect the following new members